Okay, guys, sorry about that. Welcome to part two. I looked up his name because I really want to do him justice. His name is Yosef Haddad. That's his name. So there's Musab Hassan Yosef, and then there's Yosef Haddad. So, okay, so these three things are something I've noticed about this. So, number one, as I've already said, he's a communist. So we know that. Why is that important to know? Because we know that means that his ideology, primarily, is not based on Palestinianism. Although he is a believer in Palestinianism, which Palestinianism, I've done that was actually my first video. Actually, it was maybe my second video I ever did on this channel. Palestinianism is the whole ideology of Palestine, the belief that there's this unique separate group of people called the Palestinians, and they live in this land called Palestine that they're indigenous to, going back thousands of years, and that it's their blood and soil, it's their essence of who they are, and that they've been stolen from and raped and persecuted and robbed and mistreated and genocided and colonized and abused for almost 100 years by those evil white colonialist European Jews who came from Europe and stole their land, and we need to fight for their liberation so that they can rise up against that imperial white colonialist enterprise, and fight and win and free Palestine for the Palestinian people, their ancient homeland that they've cherished and has been a part of their identity and their way of life for centuries. Okay, that's what Palestinianism is. It's that entire ideology, all of which is absolute fucking bullshit. All of which is completely ahistorical and just distortions, and lie after lie after lie. So, but I've done plenty of videos on that particular topic. I won't get into that right now. But what I do want to talk about is so he does believe in Palestinianism, but that is not his primary motivation. His primary motivation is that he's a communist. Okay, so his Palestinianism becomes a mask or a uniform, if you will, to where, in order not to disguise his communism, but sort of to make it more legitimate. Because if you just come right out and you're like one of these people, you're like, I'm a communist, I want no nations, no borders, I want just everybody we should all just be citizens of the world and should all be equal and all be equitable and free, and there should be no billionaires. Everybody should have the same and equal and everything, and we shouldn't have nations and religions. That's all stupid, and destructive. We should just be united as one people, one humanity, united citizens of one world, together, in this utopia, blah, 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 blah. The very basis of communism, which, by the way, never fucking works, ever. And not only does it not work, but it always leads to horrendous, horrible results. I mean, the crimes of the communists in the 20th century, if we didn't have the Nazis already, the communists would be the Nazis. If the Nazis had never existed, but the communists with everything that they had, we wouldn't be thinking of Nazis the way we do. Well, there would be, we wouldn't think about it if they didn't exist, obviously. But if they didn't exist, but everything else was the same, just not the Nazis and the effects of what they did, but basically everything else was the same, like the communist countries and all their stuff, You know, like, okay, let's say they didn't go to war with Germany per se, but let's say the Soviet Union had gone into a major war with some other nation. Let's say maybe like a monarchy, for example, right? Let's say that happened instead of them fighting the Nazis. Then today we would be thinking of the Soviets and the communists the same way that we think of in the popular imagination, the way we think of the Nazis. Because when we think of the Nazis, we just automatically think, oh, pure evil, right? So if the Nazis had not existed, but the communists had, and all the others, everything that happened to the communists had still happened, like maybe like the Nazi stuff had happened to them, but like, you know, like I just said, maybe they went to war with like some monarchy or whatever, or with America. Maybe they went to war with America, you know, whatever, right? And they still did all the stuff they've done, we would be thinking of communists and Soviets the same way we think of Nazis. We'd just be thinking, oh, they're just pure evil. Because the things that the communists did to people, I mean, the communists actually killed even more people than the Soviets did. I mean, I'm sorry, than the Nazis. I mean, than the Nazis did. I mean, the Nazis killed 6 million Jews, 11 million total people were victims. 11 to 12 million total people were victims of the Holocaust. So you had 6 million Jews, and then you had about 4 to 6 more million, so 4 to 6 million other people, which included various groups. In that, there was the Romani people, known pejoratively as gypsies, which is now considered an offensive term. That's now considered a slur. There's so the Romani people, which also the Sinti people. The Sinti people are also part of the Romani people, but it's weird because they're like related, but they're not exactly the same. But because they're so similar, like they usually go together, Romani, Sinti. But historically, the Romani and the Sinti people are actually different people, and they're actually a very interesting people. Their story is really interesting. They're an ancient civilization of people who came from ancient India and moved into Europe and just lived in Europe for centuries. That's why a lot of the elements of their culture and their religion have a lot of very Indian-esque, like the way that they wear their clothes, like the way the women like wear their veils, and the designs of like traditional Romani and Sinti clothing is the colors and the style is very similar to like Islamic or like even like Hindu culture. It's very close to, I'd say, like Iranian, like traditional Iranian or like Persian. And by the way, free Persia, death to the regime, death to the mullahs, free Iran 2026. Or sorry, liberate Iran 2026. Can hear its own, may it be his will. But it's really hot today. And I was walking back from shul in the heat. Anyway, where does it go? Oh, sorry guys, give me just a second. Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah. And then there were also, gay people, gay men, primarily gay men, but also lesbians were also persecuted. But I think more so was even more harsh for gay men, like the pink triangle that the Nazis made them wear in the concentration camps. In some ways, gay people are actually treated even worse than Jewish people. Because Jewish people, they just were like, well, like they're racist, supremacist garbage against Jewish people. But with gay people, they like thought of gay people as like perverts, like they thought of them the same as like we think of pedophiles. And so, in a lot of ways, they were treated even much harsher. In fact, they suffered even much longer than Jewish people. Because after the war, after the Nazis had already been defeated, a lot of the gay people who were prisoners in concentration camps, homosexuality was still illegal in Germany. So even after they were liberated from the concentration camps, they still wound up getting rearrested and sent to jail into German prisons, whether it was in either West, Democratic West, or Communist East, either one, Germany, because homosexuality was still illegal after the war. In fact, it was still considered basically a mental illness by pretty much everybody at that point. People either viewed it as just a disgusting outright perversion like pedophilia, or although I should be particular, pedophilia does have a psychopathic form of mental illness that goes to it. So, I mean, if you want to call homosexuality a mental illness, which it's not, but if you wanted to, then in that vein, there is somewhat of a similarity with pedophilia in that sense. But that's already getting way, way, way off topic. But yeah, so the communists, like, the point I'm trying to make here is that communism is not good. Communism is not, like, heroic. Like, there's nothing to honor about communism. Communism is terrible. Socialism is horrible. It always ends in disaster and mass murder and corruption, and it never fucking works. People want to say, well, what about the what people want to say with pride? Even the one place it did work is the kibbutzes, the kibbutzim in Israel, the farming communities where they had socialism, and there it worked. There they had real socialism, and that's because the Jews are just so good at everything, and they were the one people in that instance that were finally able to make socialism work because Jews know how to do everything right, right? Well, not really. That's sort of a myth. In reality, the kibbutzim devolved into these horrible, dishonest, greedy organizations that hated each other and were bitter. Even within each kibbutz, there was people hated each other. There was bitterness. There was so much resentment. I mean, it was vile. It was a hotbed of just vicious, just total disunity and hatred for each other, and constant clashes, and even many times led to outright violence. Why? Because some people worked really, really, really hard, and they got food, and they got clothing, and they got everything, and then other people worked to pay half as hard, or not hard at all, and they also got the same thing. And that's why communism never works. Is like, I worked 3.5 hours in the hot fucking field, or 3.5. I worked 8.5 hours in the hot fucking field with barely any water, with one bottle of water to drink. I had to ration it. Fred over here, who by the way is just as able-bodied and mentally capable as I am, he just didn't feel like working in the field today, so he just decided to take the day off. But it's okay, because he's going to get the same portion of food as I am. Or what about this? What about I work really hard, and I harvest a certain amount, and I save up a whole bunch. Let's say I save up, like I harvest 100 bundles of whatever wheat, whatever it is, right? You can clearly tell I'm not a farmer. My mother, may she rest in peace, she was a farm girl, but I grew up in the city, so... and then let's say somebody else, they put in about half of the effort, and they get, let's say, whatever. Let's say they put in about half of the effort, and they get about 50 bundles, right? Well, in the end of the day, they get to keep their 50 bundles, and I have to give up half of my 100. Either I have to give up half of my 100, so I have 50 and they have 50, so it's equal. Then what do you do with the other 50? I'm not really sure. Maybe they redistribute it amongst the rest of the group or whatever until it all adds up. The point is, everybody, let's say, okay, let's say the idea behind it. Here's a better. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't really do that for justice. I don't have a better way to explain this. Let's say at the end of the day, everybody lines up. They come up and they get $5. No matter what they do, no matter how hard they work, whatever it is, they get $5. But let's say somebody worked like more time than anybody else, but they still get $5 because at the end of the day, everybody gets $5. But that starts to be bullshit because, like, what if you didn't work hard? What if you only earned $2? Or what if you worked way more than that? What if you earned 20? You know, why should you all get exactly the same for different amounts of effort? And that's where communism fails, because the people that work hard and put in and really do sacrifice become resentful of the people that work less, or even often that don't work at all, and then just take advantage and just suck off the system, and that causes the hatred and the resentment. And that's what happened to the kibbutzim. Today the kibbutzim are completely capitalist. They hire Arabs. They just hire Arabs like to do the dirty work that they don't want to do, just like we do with Hispanic people here in America. Like, yeah, we don't want to clean the toilets. Just get the illegal immigrants to fucking do that. I don't want to do that shit. Not me, an American, a white person. I'm not gonna do that shit. You know, it's the same. It's sort of the same thing. You know, but fucking get the Arabs to fucking do it. Now, I know that I have to defend Israel. And I say that Israel doesn't have the racism problem and everything like a race says it does. Well, that's not entirely true. Of course Israel has racism and has bigotry. I mean, every country has it. To be so naive, to believe that Israel is the one country that's so perfect and wonderful and beautiful, that there's no... And I'm not just talking about Jews and Arabs. I mean, even, like, Ashkenazi Jews looking down on Mizrahi Jews as, like dirty and dumb and, like, you know, just not as refined as us, you know, European learned, you know, Ashkenazi elitist, you know, academic, you know, PhDs and whatnot. No, we're not like those dirty fucking people that came out of the Syrian desert with their payas and their big old talasim, their primitive religious nonsense. You know, yeah, that does go on. Of course that goes on. Of course it does. In fact, there was plenty of discrimination against Mizrahi Jews, against Ethiopian Jews. In fact, in Indy Niall's video, in fact, I think it's even this video that I've been talking about so far, I think he even brings that up. Yet there is racism in Israel. Of course there is. You'd have to be insane. Even if you'd never been there, and I've lived there, but even if you've never even been there, like, you would obviously be like, yeah, of course there's racism, because it's human. Because humans are stupid, and humans are ignorant, and humans are driven by so many negative desires and selfishness and greed and messed up, skewed views of the way things are and people and how things should be. Like, of course it exists everywhere. Racism and bigotry and homophobia, all of that stuff exists in every society. The question is it prevalent? Is it the domineering philosophy excuse me, pardon me, of the society? And that's the issue that I bring up. And the thing is, in Israel, no, it's not. And there where there was discrimination, there are now laws against it. Again, now, do people still get away with it? Of course they do. But it's not on the books to be discriminatory. It's not part of Israeli law. Like, if a Mizrahi Jew wants to buy a home, but and a German Ashkenazi Jew wants to buy a home, and they both have the same amount And they come to the court, and the court should decide who should get the home. Of course, we give it to the Ashkenazi Jew, because the Mizrahi is this fucking dirty desert dweller, believes in God and religion and all that weird shit. We're not gonna give him a fucking. Why should we give him a home? Why? So, why should we give him a home? Just to sit around and, so he could sit around and learn Talmud all day and have 500 children? Like, no, we're gonna give it to the Ashkenazi guy who's gonna be learned and he's gonna provide culture, like, it's not on the books to do that. It never was. Okay, that may happen, of course, but it's not written into the law of Israel that that's how you should do it. So, there's that. I'm gonna, I need to take a little bit of a break. I'm gonna do part 3, so I'll get back to you guys in a little bit. Stay tuned.